All right, we're Kuf Aleph Amud Beis 101b, and it's about 10 lines, maybe 12 lines from the top of the page, and it's Taf Reish, Tanur Rabbanon. So we mentioned the king Menashe, son of Chizkiah. We mentioned him in the context of part of Rabbi Akiva speaking to his teacher and telling him that the pain he's going through can be used as a way to deepen his connection to Hashem. He cited the example of Menashe, who grew up under the tutelage of his father, the great king Chizkiah, and nonetheless abandoned the ways of Hashem, but later in life, because of the difficulties he went through, came back. So in that context, the Gemara shares the following teaching. Tanur Rabbanan, our sages taught, Mishnaic age, Tanaic age text. I think actually in English you say Tatanaic, no? Something like that. Anyway. I always see it written, I don't know how to pronounce it.
Tanaic, yeah, Tanaic text.
No, there in English you had another T somewhere, isn't that right?
No, a Tanaic text.
Yeah? Okay. So Tanur Rabbanan, our sages taught, Shloisha ba'u ba'alila. There are three people in scripture who we can see came to God with a kind of complaint, with like a counter argument, if you will. Alila is like a...
Also kind of trickery, like it's not like...
Yeah, but it's like a claim. They're like making like a ifs, and you'll see. Kind of like it must be this way because, like, like trying to outsmart, as it were, trying to rationalize their way to their position. Elovain, and they're the following: Cain, Esav, and Menashe. The second one being in the last week's parsha. Cain, of course, number one, Cain. Cain is, of course, the son of Adam and Chava, who, as a result of jealousy, kills his brother Hevel. Either he knew what he was doing or he didn't know what he was doing. Right? These are the first people that ever lived. The first killing, they had no idea even what death was. They didn't even they had not necessarily hadn't even encountered death. Some of the commentaries note that he didn't necessarily even realize what he was doing. Rashi has a little discussion on that, but at any rate, so after he's... that
would be an interesting defense.
I had no idea what murder was.
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a thing called person stops living.
Right. People could die after they be murdered. I thought they'd just fall down and come back up.
Well, actually, God... the problem is that God told Adam when he was kicked out of the Garden of Eden that there was going to be death. But not necessarily did they know that there's such a thing called murder. Meaning, when God decides, God decides. Anyway, there's a lot of discussion, interesting discussion about that in the commentaries. I'm trying to remember what does Rashi say. That Rashi says something about this. But he kept on hitting him, he wasn't sure, and then, anyway.
Well, couldn't have been premeditated, that's for sure.
Not in the same way we know it, sure not. Certainly not.
Good manslaughter.
Yeah, so he was banished, he was told he was going to wander the earth, and so he complained at one point, and he said, so he complained to God and says, the verse reads, Cain speaks to God and says, literally means my sin is too great to bear, which means like the punishment you're giving me is too great for me to carry. And the end was that God, as Rashi interprets the verses there, at the end was that God granted him protection against the wild animals as he wanders the earth. Excuse me, he was banished and he had to wander the earth. He was Novenod, as the verse says. He was like he was a wanderer, he was never settled, but at least he was protected against the wild animals. So where's the Alila? Where's the, besides just complaining to God that he can't handle it, where was like the counterclaim? Where was like the argument he's presenting? So says the Gemara, Lafanov, Cain rationalized before God, Rebbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe. Kolum God Lavani. Is it indeed the case that my sin is greater, Mishishim Ribun, than the 60,000 Shasidim Lachter Lefanach that they're going to sin before you? What did I do? I killed a guy. 600,000 people are going to stand there in front of you. You're going to tell them, do not have any other gods before you. And within 40 days, they're going to make another god. Am I worse than them? They survived, at least most of them survived, and they continue to be your people. And here I am, cast away. And you forgive them. What about me? That's the rationalization, the claim that that Cain makes. I'm not 100% sure how the Gemara came to this conclusion. I mean, where in the verses indicated that Cain says anything more than my punishment is too great to bear. So it seems to me, because of the way the verse writes it, Cain doesn't say my punishment is too great to bear, or the consequence is too great to bear. He says the sin is too great to bear. What does he mean when he says the sin is too great to bear? You bared it, you did it. What do you mean my sin is too great to bear? So therefore he's kind of saying, my sin isn't that great. Is my sin that great that deserves such punishment? Unless it derives that he's not arguing about the punishment, but about the greatness of his sin. Unless he's comparing to somebody else, or other people later, who sinned, don't get as much great as a punishment, whereas I sinned at a lesser level, so to speak, right? And yet I get this great punishment. Okay, so that's character number one. Character number two is Esav. Esav, last week's parsha, Yaakov's twin brother. After Yaakov uses cunning, wit, to outsmart Esav and get the blessings, Rivka guides him into getting the blessings from Yitzchak. And Esav comes in right afterwards, and of course he's furious. He lost the blessings of the birth of the firstborn birthright, and he says, "Diksiv." And then the verse reads, he tells his father, "Habracha achasi le'avicha la'avi l'cha'avi." Is there only one blessing to my father? Like, what is this? You only have one little finite blessing, and you can't give me anything? And the truth is that was the case, because the blessing that Yitzchak wasn't giving, this is clear from the narrative, wasn't just a blessing like anybody blesses anybody else, but rather specifically the blessing that God gives to Avram. And then God tells Avram, you have more than one child, but it's only going to one son. And as Rashi implicates, Yitzchak knew that it could also only go to one son. Right? There was this blessing that your children shall be a great nation. So there's only one, and he had an implication that only one child. So it's not just a blessing, I bless anybody. It was a very specific bracha of the children being the chosen people, and only one child can get that. But nonetheless, Esav came saying, like, you don't have any more blessings left? Okay, so that's number two. At the end was the blessing he got was almost a counter to the blessing that we got, which is that when we're down, he can rise. So it's almost like the other end of our blessing. Internally, you have Yetzer Tov, you have Yaakov, and the only blessing Esav, the Yetzer Hara, has is that when the Yetzer Tov is weak, the Yetzer Hara can pounce. Getting back to something we talked about before, that the way to fight the Yetzer Hara is by bolstering the Yetzer Tov, because the Yetzer Hara only has permission to attack when the Yetzer Tov is down. So if one bolsters their good side, then automatically the negative is down. Okay, because there is only one bracha. So there is only one strength that can happen. The question is which way it goes. And then finally, the third person who used this alila, used this rationalization to try to make his claim against God, gets back to Menashe, our original person we began this discussion with last week. So Menashe, this king, Menashe, son of Chizkiah, who again began his tenure as king for many years as a bad king, and then under stress after being taken captive into Assyria, davens to Hashem and then comes back. And the Gemara comments like this: B'tchila, before Menashe called out to God, Kara lo lakus harbe, he called out to all various different types of gods, and obviously none of them responded to him. But b'soif, only at the end, Kara leke'avosav, excuse me, he called out to the God of his fathers. So where's his alila? Where's his argument? So explains Rashi that because he began by calling out first with other gods and then called out to God, what he's basically saying to God is, if you don't respond to me, it's going to be an indication that you're all the same and you're all useless. So it's almost like, so to speak, he put God in a position. God had to, but he was lawyering God, if you will. Like, if you don't respond, then everything else, it's going to show that you're just as useful as anybody else, and all the other gods didn't respond, and you're not either responding. So you better respond, kind of thing. And thus, these are the three, the Gemara comments, that turn to God, Balila, with this kind of lawyering Hashem. Now, it's interesting. Excuse me.
That God responds to him.
That's right, that's number one. Number two.
It's like what am I, the last resort? Okay, the other ones didn't work. Okay, so now you're coming to me.
Yeah.
Why don't you come to me first?
It's interesting and that's interesting, that although the Gemara kind of uses the word alila, which is a negative word. Alila is a negative word. It's not like a positive word where you say like they came b'chachma, like they came to God with wit. Alila is much more than that. Alila is like a claim. You come with a claim against God. It's like in a negative connotation. Yet two things. First of all, the Gemara does not say don't do this or something like that. Not that I'm saying the Gemara says you should, but the Gemara doesn't say that. And furthermore, each of these three got responded to. When Cain came with a claim and said, my sin is too great to bear, God said, okay, I'm going to protect you against the animals. You're right. When Esav came and said, you only have one blessing, he gets a blessing. Like we just explained, Yitzchak tells him, yes, I only have one blessing, but you can get the other side. That if Yaakov is down, you can rise up. In other words, each of them came with their claim, they actually got responded to. And same with Menashe. When he came to God with that claim and said, if you don't respond, I'm going to treat you like all other gods who are useless, God said, okay. And he was saved. So they actually all got responded to, notwithstanding the fact that the Gemara puts it in negative light, that they lawyer in God. So I don't know what to make of it, but something of the effect like, this is not the proper relationship with Hashem. The proper relationship with Hashem is with humility, and whatever hands Hashem deals us, we take it with faith, and we take it on, this is what Hashem wants, and that's it. But at the same time, there is an interaction, and a person can stake his claim, even if it's not, even if it's risky, because each one of them got responded to. They didn't get punished for lawyering God, for making these claims. They actually got responded to. God said, okay. God gave in to each of them. So it's interesting. I don't know exactly. So I don't want to say it's a positive thing. You're supposed to do it this way, because the Gemara is not. Alila is not a positive word. Alila is a negative word. But nonetheless, there's some room for it somewhere. Anyway.
This relates to a certain extent in what we learned in Tanya, that the mashal of everyone can take from a chest of wealth. Okay.
Yeah.
The question is, are you going to take it, with service to Hashem, or are you just going to
take it freely, freeload?
Take it freely. So here they took it. They got at the end. They got some of it, but they didn't get it.
They got it in the wrong way.
They didn't get it, in the proper way. So Hashem was like saying, I'm not going to cut you out, but you should know that you're getting it in a very, you're not.
It's not the proper way of doing it.
Proper way.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah, it's possible. It makes sense. Also, I'd like to see what the common denominator is. Like, what's the connection between these three claims? What's the where's the common thread here? Or there has to be some common thread between Cain, Esav, and.
The first thing, they don't acknowledge their own fault. It's always they're like Cain killed someone, and Esav was unworthy of the bracha.
Cain doesn't say, "I'm sorry, I did this, but please show me mercy, please show compassion."
He should have first admit his guilt and then say that, say, no, I'm not as bad as someone else.
And neither does Esav say, "Look, I sold the birthright."
Exactly, that's right. Plus, he also was a Rashi.
And Menashe doesn't say, "I spent the last 30 years being negative."
I played all idols, and I come to you at the end. They should at least admit their guilt. But they want to basically.
On the contrary, there's a sense of entitlement.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
And
that's what I'm saying. It's
also playing one against it. That's the commentary. So if Hashem can give only one bracha, Hashem doesn't have the power. Hashem can't forgive. It's kind of like almost like taunting Hashem, because Hashem is Rachamim and Hashem is all.
Yeah, but the response could have been also, on the other hand, the response could have been from God. That, I'm sorry, that's not how you speak to your God.
That's right.
We're doubling down on the punishment. God could have said that, but God didn't.
That's right.
God, that's what I'm saying. There's an interesting dynamic here, and I'd like to see what's the common thread between all these three different, or what's like the anyway, something to think about.
Worthy, but Hashem nevertheless for His chesed or Rachamim grant their request to a certain extent.
Yeah.
What do they represent? What are their? They're obviously, all three of them are prototypical negative behavior, right? Which to some degree we all have. And the question is what they represent and how these things play. Anyway, it's interesting.
They didn't confess their sin. They didn't do tshuva. They simply wanted to mitigate the effect of the punishment.
Yeah.
But Cain wasn't in their category.
Why?
He didn't know any. He didn't know. What do you know from death?
Right, so that's what I was saying. He knew about death, even though they never counted it, but they knew that there was such a thing called death because God told Adam and Eve when they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden that they were going to die. So they knew death existed. I don't know if he knew murder existed. I can't remember right now, but Rashi comments on it, about how he kept on hitting him because he wasn't sure. You remember this, Rashi?
Yeah, they didn't know which place they could kill the person.
But he didn't know where, right, that's right. he intended to murder, but he didn't know where in the body murder happens. Because he knew about death, but he didn't know like where the vital organs. He kept on hitting him. So anyway, these are all things to think about and putting it out there.
And the Menashe thing, it's the fact that he tried many different before he came to them. That's kind of a good lesson in a way, like that. You know, you could try all the other religions, Buddhism, Hinduism, but at the end of the day, if you do tshuva, God will accept you. So it's okay.
Even if you come through the back door.
Even if you can, yeah. I'm just like for that particular story.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, oh, you tried other gods, forget it. I'm not interested. No, go try them. Then you'll realize where the real truth lies. Sometimes you have to go through that process. Like your father sat in with the Buddhists.
It's interesting.
They have to go through that whole exercise to realize that Yiddishkeit has everything that they're really looking for. But sometimes you have to go through that process. You have to go down to the lowest in order to come up. So that's kind of a positive. You can look at it.
So there's Menashe.
For Menashe, only for that.
So that's also another interesting. Yeah. That's very interesting. Menashe at the end of the day does tshuva. Esav doesn't, and neither does Cain. So maybe there's some sort of like slow progression towards that, like leading up to the final Menashe does teshuvah. Just see how that plays in. I have to put more thought into that. That's very good.
Also, three types of people. You have Cain as like all mankind, put it that way. Esav is a kind of a renegade Jew, and no longer considered Jewish because his offspring corrupt by Hashem. It's like the church, and like especially the church, and maybe to a certain extent Islam. And Menashe is a Jew. So you have three different levels. That's Menashe.
Menashe ends up doing tshuva.
That are two different.
No, they didn't do tshuva.
Sorry?
They didn't do tshuva. The others.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right, but when Mashiach comes, we say Vol Mashim B'Hartzim, but it's Esav, right? So when Mashiach comes, there is the redemption to Esav.
Well,
whereas Cain not necessarily.
There are two views about Esav. Some will say he'll be destroyed, like the fire of Yosef and Yaakov will burn them. So,
right.
So it means that some. So that's more makes it.
But even
some Esav will do tshuva, but some will be destroyed.
As you learn in Kabbalah, certain klippos actually get their redemption through the destruction. They get their redemption.
Right, but there are many psukim with destruction of Esav, and some say two types.
I'm saying the redemption comes through their destruction also. In you learn Kabbalah, you find that the lower levels of klippa, shirasan zui tekanasan, right? Their breaking is their redemption.
But
anyway.
Psukim and also in the Gemara, they think that Esav will be destroyed.
I'm saying, and in that is their redemption.
No, that's redemption. Other part of Esav, people realize that the ones who got destroyed will do because now we do like
anyway. These are all interesting things to think about.
The other gods are false, and that's mentioned in the prophets as well.
Very interesting that even on Yom Kippur, what is it we read when you think of Jonah? So we got to the fact that he didn't want to do it. He didn't want even the non-Jews. What am I doing?
Yeah.
But they did do tshuva in the bed.
Yeah.
And so the idea was.
V'lo Mashim B'Hartzim, that's the Mishpat Esav, right?
Exactly. And
okay.
It's very remarkable that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, in one of his asides, when he I think it was about Avimelech. I was just reading just 2 days ago or so that we should never give up as a light unto the nations for others. What fall into Noahide laws, God forbid we shouldn't even give up on them recognizing our mission in life.
Yeah.
That's why Abraham, for example, was such a tremendous exemplar that he was able to go out of his comfort zone, whereas Yitzhak couldn't. We need people like that also to be able to.
Yes, that's like we're thinking and connected to something you were saying, whereas Cain is almost representative of all mankind, Esav, Jewish protagonism, and Menashe within Judaism itself, kind of something like you were saying. Anyway, you have to see, these are all good thoughts, put them all together, try to find something cohesive. But thank you. Okay, so a few more lines in the Gemara. Getting back to the Mishnah, so this whole discussion, everything here comes from the Mishnah, which is talking about the world to come, as we discussed a number of times what that is, and those who, for certain sins, put themselves outside the purview of that, and those who are not worthy of the world to come. So the Mishnah said that Abba Shaul said, within inside the two colons, like it's kind of brackets highlighting the words of the Mishnah, and then the Gemara comments. So Abba Shaul says, Af, likewise, Ha'hoiges Hashem B'Yis Yosef Chulu, one who pronounces God's name in its letters. That is to say, he pronounces the name Yud, Hey, Vav, and then a Hey. Pronounced, when you daven, you pronounce it as the same you would Adnai.
The value of 72?
Oh, the Beth
Oh,
is
this
26.
70
Havaya is 26.
With the Mal, yes.
No,
The
no,
Mal.
no. 72?
Depends which mole.
You have to count them.
Different Mal.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
There's 45.
You
50.
talk, you see, there's 72.
Commonly pronounced Havaya. So when one pronounces that name as it's written, like if you look at the actual Nakudesh, the actual vowels, we don't pronounce it the way it's written. And first thing, I'm just going to comment what the Gemara says, and then we'll explain that a little bit on a deeper level. So Tana, although one second, back up a second. Although it's forbidden to pronounce the name of Hashem ever in its proper form, we never pronounce it that way. But not everybody who pronounces it is outside of or puts themselves in the category of one who loses their share in the world to come. Only under the following circumstances would one lose their share in the world to come, even though it's always forbidden. Namely, Tana, our sages taught, ubigvulin, when does one who pronounces the name of Hashem as it's written lose their share in the world to come? If they do it, bigvulin literally means in the borders. It means outside of the temple, just around Israel, anywhere. And likewise, uvalashin aga, or aga, which means to say it colloquially, meaning you say it nonchalantly without any reason. If one did it in prayer, although they're not supposed to, but they wouldn't necessarily lose their share in the world to come. Okay, so the Gemara is going to later in the Gemara is going to come up again this idea of pronouncing Hashem's name and not pronouncing it as it's written, and how Mashiach comes, we're going to pronounce it as it's written, and we say it on Aleinu, Hashem echad, Ishma echad. At that time, God's name will be one, and He will be one. His name being one, in that we're pronounced it the same way it's written. What does this mean? Like, what's the big deal of not pronouncing it? What's the story? So understand this a little bit. What this means basically is the more something is enunciated, the more it is elicited and revealed in this world. That's what enunciation and writing means. So, in a certain way, pronouncing is a revelation on a lower plane than written. Right? Written remains somewhat within the realm of the holy text. When something is written, you don't just write it in Hashem's name either. It's written in the context of a verse. It's written in the context of a holy book, and therefore it remains living within the realm of holiness. When you're pronouncing something, now we're relying on the person who's pronouncing. His mind has to be in the right place. His soul has to be in the right place. The people listening have to be in the right place. And now he's kind of bringing it into the world in a deeper way. Because the name of Hashem, yeah?
It goes like the old saying, speak of the donkey and the donkey shall appear.
I suppose. So in that sense, the name of Hashem, especially that name, Yud, Hey, Avav, and then a Hey, which represents the highest form of godly revelation, even on the most simple, plain level of the, never mind the Kabbalistic, but even the most simple level of the Chumash. Look at Rashi's first comment on the first time on the first name the name appears. He writes there that this is his actual name. And thus, because until such time that Mashiach comes, our world is not yet ready for that kind of revelation, and thus eliciting that revelation at a time when the world is not ready is like dragging the king by his head and pulling him through the mud. Until this world is ready and clean and elevated so that it's capable to receive and experience the divine revelation in our human conscience through its mouth cannot pronounce that name of Hashem. That's the most basic way of understanding it.
It's like knowing that someone has a huge sum of money, and just to give a practical, a concrete example, in fact, dealing with completely something that's spiritual, it's always there. So it's the Haya Hove Yeh in God. That He was, He is, He will be. It's eternally there. That this Mashiach is eternally there for us. The only thing is this. It's already actualized in God, because there is no past, present, or future. Are we ready to receive it? Is another story. Are we ready to go to the bank account? It's a spiritual bank account. Have we taken enough of our income tax of the soul to be then worthy of it? Yeah. That balance sheet of the barometer of our ethical temperature.
Another physical example for this is there are certain things, let's say, that a couple, a husband and wife, should say to each other that if said in the wrong place is completely terrible. But if said in the context of their intimacy and the privacy of their own bedroom, then it's a beautiful thing. So it's the same words, exact same words, but said in one place is just inappropriate and a violation of the relationship, and said in the privacy of their own room. It's beautiful, and it's supposed to be said, and it should be said. So in a similar way, actually in Eicha, in Lamentations, we compare our relationship to Hashem during exile as a nida, as a woman who's during the period when husband and wife can't be together. So the intimacy between God and us isn't as deep now before the revelation of Hashem, before the revelation of Mashiach's coming. And therefore, saying such things are inappropriate. But when Mashiach comes and we're in this intimate union with Hashem, not only is it appropriate, it's good. It's supposed to be said. That's another way of thinking about it. You're revealing certain things, even though you're thinking them, even though you feel them, but you don't reveal them unless it's in the right context. And when Mashiach comes and we're in this intimate place with Hashem, then pronouncing His name itself is not only not appropriate, not only not a disservice, but it's actually beautiful. And it's a good thing. It should be said. But until such point, it's inappropriate and a violation of the relationship. Another way of thinking about it.
Also mention that words have a lot of power, and we should guard our spoken words.
Sure.
Because they can manifest into things.
Our words are very powerful.
Very hurtful.
Yeah.
We haven't earned it yet to have that intimacy, because you have to earn intimacy.
Yeah. You're talking about words are very powerful. There's there's a saying, sticks and stones hurt my bones, but words will never harm me. To me, that's the silliest thing in the world.
It's not true.
Sticks and bones hurt your bones. You put a cast on and it's fixed. Yeah. Words that hurt, you can't put a cast on your head and all of a sudden the hurtful words disappear. It's completely to the contrary.
They say the worst form of abuse from anyone.
It's verbal, emotional, for sure.
Verbal abuse is worse than getting hit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We talked about this before. We think of if you can't touch it, it's less real. It's ridiculous. Completely the reverse. Something you touch, that's its whole existence. Its whole existence that you can touch it. But then when you get to speech and you get to thoughts, they're much more real. They're much more true to who we are and to what the truth of everything is.
Everything is created and destroyed by words.
Sure.
The final
Creation is done by words.
Exactly.
Words.
The final solution in the whole bunch on the Holocaust.
Sorry?
It's exactly that.
Utterances.
The words that were said with regard to the
Where
final
did they
solution.
get the word?
Sure.
Hashem revealed Himself that
On
way.
the flip side,
Did He say it?
action.
Sure. At Sinai, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Anochi, I am, and the next word is
First two commandments.
Havaya, is that name, and then Elokecha, your Lord. So it's right there. God reveals Himself that way.
No, what I'm saying
I
actually.
mean, it's written earlier in the Torah, but the first time God communicates that is at Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Even when God reveals Himself at the burning bush, and Moshe Rabbeinu asks, "What's your name?" He doesn't fully reveal it.
He said, I am what I am.
Yeah, even though that's also a name of God, but in a different kind of way. It's a name of God that's not revealed, that's not expressed. But the first time God expresses Himself and says, "This is my name," is that I am God, your Lord.
Not talking during
That word God is a translation of
talking during the
Yud, Hey, Avav, and then Hey.
talking to Hashem.
Sure, but between
Okay, have a wonderful day, everybody.